Welcome to Radiologists, a podcast by University Medical Imaging Toronto, where we discuss the most interesting topics through the lens of Canada's largest medical imaging department. I'm your host, Satish Krishna. Healthcare is as complex as it can get because it involves teams of individuals at multiple levels working together for the betterment of patient. What is the role of communication here? How crucial is communication? And how can we all be better at that? To answer these questions, we have with us today a communications expert, Don Martin. Don, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. And I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. So Don, you've been working with clinicians for a long time now. And as you know that clinicians, as you pointed out, they have a difficult job and they spend years being competent in what they do. In one of your quotes, I've seen that you said relationship competence is probably more important or causes more problems than clinical competence. What do you mean by that? And how can you improve relationship competence?
Okay. Well, when I reflect about over the years, all the stories I've heard and the concerns and complaints that have arisen, I realize they're really in, I'm going to say, 6 big buckets.
Mm-hmm.
They come from patients and families.
Okay.
They come from your colleagues. They come from the admin staff.
Okay.
The healthcare team, learners themselves, medical trainees,
Okay.
and sometimes the CPSO.
Okay.
And when I look back and sort of deconstruct all of those complaints, I realize they all had one thing in common. Complaints and concerns always come when somebody feels like the other person doesn't care about them, care about their time, care about their opinion, care about their feelings. And when that happens, a complaint comes or a concern.
You were saying that different groups feel that physicians don't care or somebody else don't care about them. Do you think that the root of the problem was that people actually don't care, or that there is a gap in communication in which when people do care, it isn't reflected in how things are communicated with each other? Is it lack of intention or just lack of communication?
I would say everybody cares. I think assume good intentions of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think what ends up happening, or what I end up seeing, is there's a great quote. We judge ourselves on our intentions. And most of us think we have good intentions. We really do get up in the morning with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And we judge other people on their behaviors and actions because we can't get inside their head.
Yeah.
And we make assumptions about what those intentions mean. And we often over-personalize.
Yeah.
And I think that often leads to misinterpretation of people's good intentions.
So do you think that most of these problems in communication among physicians occur due to misinterpretation? And if so, how can we improve that? Because it seems like a two-sided problem. One in which the person delivering the actions or the words or communication should try and be better. But then I see that there probably is a role for the receiver as well, because often these days, we don't listen to understand, but we often just listen to reply. So it kind of seems like a two-sided problem. How do both parties try and be better in both providing communication and receiving communication?
Great question. I think we can't necessarily change somebody else. So we can only look at ourselves and what can we do, right?
Okay.
And what I've learned about this stuff is I get people to start with their own self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got a story. You've got a story. I've got a story. That story starts basically the day we are born. Some people say even before that. And that story it really becomes our filter or lens on ourselves, on other people in the world. And we interpret, we bring our past into every interaction, and we have that lens around how we're interpreting. So one of the things I do is raise people's self-awareness around what their story is and what they're bringing basically to the interaction, because our story also influences our beliefs and values. And our values and beliefs can also be our triggers or what gets us going with other people. The reason self-awareness, I think, is important, or one of the reasons self-awareness is important, again, is because it's the lens in which we function from and operate from. And I always like to say that to think about people as a third. And you're working, a third of people are going to love you. And there's a third of people, because they get you, they understand you, the humor is the same, you have a relationship. There's a third in there that you're okay. And, you're fine. And then there's the other third. And I'm overgeneralizing about the third. Often it's like 10% of people. And those 10%, either we're triggered by them or we're triggering them ourselves, something that we're doing. And we don't really care about the other 2/3. I'm not so much concerned about the top 2/3, it's that bottom third. And helping people, somebody misinterpreted again, because it's just perception, misinterpreted your good intentions, and helping people understand that it's only an interpretation and it's only a perception. And that helps actually people stay grounded and be able to hear feedback. So knowing what your values are, understanding what your red flags are, understanding what your blind spots are all things that go into what your story is, what your past is. We all had a mommy, daddy. They influenced us, our friends, our past experiences. Well, that's what we're bringing. Everybody's got a story. There's 7 billion people on this planet, 7 billion different perceptions, interpretations, and stories.
That's very interesting you put it like that. So, in a way, the person receiving the communication, maybe 1/3, as you point out, may be triggered by it or something. But it's good for that third to kind of realize that whatever this person is saying is coming from the lens of their past and their stories. But even if they do misinterpret, quite often it ends up in a vicious cycle because they misinterpret and then you misinterpret their intentions and it goes there. But it's good for the first person to realize that, hey, maybe it is just a misinterpretation problem, and stay grounded and how can we improve the way we deliver the message so that it kind of reaches to them, right?
Exactly. And then it's about relation. Like once we're self-aware, I start there with people and helping them become aware of who they are and what they're bringing to the table and how they're viewing things. And then it's about relationship awareness and management. And what I mean by that is I can't get inside your head. You can't get inside my head. Right? And most of us put ourselves inside of somebody else's story. And all the time we over-personalize. So let me give you an example of that. Let's pretend after this podcast, you get a call from your partner, let's say, friend, who says, oh, I completely forgot. I've ordered a bunch of food, or we're having friends over, and I need you to stop at the grocery store and grab me a few things. Okay. So you're in a rush, get the items, get home. So you go off to the grocery store, you get your items, you're in the express checkout. The line of this is 8 items or less.
Yep.
And most of us sit there and count our items if we're close, and you count yours and you go, I've got 9.
Yeah.
Oh, well, 2 cartons of eggs. I'm counting them as 1 item,
Yeah, always.
Yeah. And then you look over at the guy or the person in checkout 3, and they're looking at your basket and they're looking like they're not happy.
Okay.
And most of us go, oh, really? Like, do you have nothing better to do than to judge me and to count my items? Like, what's wrong with you? Meanwhile, in their head, they're going, oh, shoot, I forgot to get the eggs. My partner's going to kill me. With relational awareness and competence, like, I can't get inside your head and you can't get inside mine.
Yeah.
And so
there's this famous quote, right? Like, people have this exaggerated sense of self-importance. They always think that everybody around them gives a damn about them. People have their own lives and their stories. Quite often, they don't really care too much. They're not paying too much attention, or they're not judging you on everything which you do. I think that once you get aware of that, you kind of get freed and liberated in a certain way.
Well, yeah, because it's baked into us safety, like our safety. Are you a friend? Are you a foe? Fight or flight.
But, yeah.
And whether it's conscious, unconscious is baked into us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're constantly judging other people and our surroundings and scenarios and trying to make a decision, right? So relational competence to me is about trying to what I call neutralize the space between people. Because when any one of us feels judged, and the three big things that really incorporate our identity and that we feel judged on are, am I competent? Am I a competent physician? Am I a competent brother? Am I a competent partner, friend? Right? The list goes on. Am I likable? And am I lovable? And when we feel somebody is judging us, most of us go into a place of shame or fear. And once we go there, whether we're conscious of it or not, we get dysregulated. And when we get dysregulated, we do one of three things, which is you're the problem. Fight, not me. You're the problem. Because no one likes feeling that way. Or it's flight. I'm going to avoid you. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to, go in the opposite direction. Or fawn. And fawn is, oh, Satish, you're the best. Yes. Great question. Good. You're getting right at it. Yeah. Oh, we're going to fawn. And what is challenging for physicians is you guys, there's a power differential or the perception that you hold more power.
Right.
And when the person who holds more power, what we know from the literature is we don't tend to, if we have the power, we don't tend to pay attention as much around us. It's kind of like being the alpha dog in a dog pack.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you can take all the rest of the dogs. So you're not really paying attention. The rest of the dogs, though, are very much paying attention to you and all the other dogs. Right? It's like being on a team. We want to be part of the in crowd. We want to be seen. And so in order not to dysregulate people, like that's what I call neutralizing the space, is trying to keep people out of a place of shame and out of a place of fear. First of all, nobody changes in a place of shame, right? And once people are dysregulated, they stop listening. They're trying to protect themselves.
So that's very interesting because physicians, we work with a lot of this power differential, as you point out always, with admins, with the other members of the healthcare team, with patients, with trainees. There's always going to be that. And as you point out, I think that relational competence and building relations are probably key to avoiding miscommunication and misinterpretation. So what are some of the good ways in which you can build relations, and how important is meeting people face to face, as well as like gestures and facial expressions, and how important are they in this story of building good relations with people?
Well, they're critical. Let's just talk about nonverbal communication. 87%, they say, of communication is nonverbal.
87?
87%.
That's a pretty high number.
Yeah, which makes sense though, because right, we're always scanning and trying to, are you a friend? Are you a foe? Are you a friend? Are you a foe? So nonverbal communication, the self-awareness piece, let's talk about that, is I often talk with people about their blind spots and knowing what they're putting out there, whether they're aware of it or not. So blind spots to me are your facial expression, your body language, and the tone in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And they're called blind spots because we can't see or hear ourselves. But we're always judging. Some physicians, yes, their face isn't, they don't come across as warm and fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have a tone to their voice. Or their resting face. Again, if you don't have a relationship. So part of the strategy with relational awareness and management is getting ahead of it. So let's say, for example, I had a really loud voice. It's saying to you, Satish, just so you know, I have a really loud voice.
Okay.
I'm not shouting at you.
Okay.
Sometimes people think I am, and I'm not. I just have a loud voice, especially when I'm really engaged with people. right? Which stops people from over personalizing. Sometimes complaints come in and that's what's happened is the patient, the team member, the colleague, and again, where there's no relationship, thinks somebody's yelling at them, or the look in their face, or the tone in their voice. So we can't change unless, first of all, we're self-aware, right? And once you're aware, then you have the opportunity to think about if there is something you want to change. And sometimes we can't change some of these things, but we can stop somebody from writing a story about our intentions.
Yeah. So if you're self-aware and if you're forthright with it, maybe then you can potentially address this even before it becomes a problem, right?
Exactly.
And I think that it is also very crucial in a city like Toronto, which is extremely cosmopolitan because you have people from all walks of life and all parts of the world in the same place. As members of the physician staff, as members of the hospital staff, or the patients, you have a delightful mix of people. While this is the strength of Toronto, this can also be a potential problem because many of physicians, including myself, we are international medical graduates in which my English is not my first language.
Right.
And also there's a cultural barrier as well in which certain things which are perceived to be okay back in my culture may not be perceived to be okay here. And I think that also quite often ends up being the crux of issues with communication. What are your suggestions on overcoming the language barrier as well as the cultural barrier while trying to establish relationships?
I think it's okay to actually say to people, English is not my first language. I am listening very carefully. If I ask you something that sounds awkward, you don't understand, please slow me down. Please ask me to repeat myself. I very much want to understand what it is you're saying.
You point out that 87% of communication is ideally nonverbal.
Yeah.
But we live in an era in which more than 87% of communication is through emails and through all meetings or through Zoom and phone calls in which you don't really see the person at all. And this, I think, becomes the root cause of a lot of miscommunication in which it's not just misinterpretation of the substance, but it's also misinterpretation of the intention as well. So what are some of the guidelines or guidance you can give in terms of good communication, especially when there is no nonverbal component to it?
Right. Well, texting now has just become, part of day-to-day how we communicate. And I think in medicine, it's slowing down, knowing that texting and email are tone deaf.
Yep.
Tone deaf. And I think the big thing for me is we have what's called no social capital built anymore with each other. So social capital, and so we're all vulnerable to being misinterpreted. So a lot of relationships in medicine can be transient, meaning, you're meeting somebody for the first time. Yeah. Social capital is when we have gotten to know people over time. Like we have social capital built with our families. We have social capital built with our friends, right? And when we have social capital built, we tend to be more forgiving, overlook, don't over-personalize as much, ask better questions. And medicine anymore, especially because I think of the technology, there's less and less social capital. And we've gotten to the point too, we don't even turn our cameras on in Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
And we're communication is about connection and relating to each other. So I often encourage people to try and look for ways to build more social connection with the people they're working with. I think especially post-COVID, with the redeployment and the retirements, et cetera, the masks, that social capital really broke down for people. So we are much edgier. We make assumptions far easier. We over-personalize more.
Yeah. And as I say, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, right?
Exactly. And there's simple ways we can do this. I mean, It's interesting because people will actually complain and concerns over somebody doesn't know my name, doesn't make eye contact with me, never says hi to other people, but not me. And all those are ways to build social capital with people. And I'm not suggesting people start talking about politics or,
That's a good
anything controversial. But you can ask, how was your weekend? Do you have any plans? How's your day going? What's your name?
Yeah, I guess we should all start with that first.
Yeah.
Like most of our job is like reports, which is mostly nonverbal. And then we interact with the other clinical team members, often through emails, and then we have our trainees. What are some of your advice on ways how to improve communication at multiple levels for radiologists specifically?
I think sometimes it's you're busy with your head down on your work. The phone rings and you're being asked a question or being told something. I think take a big breath before you pick up the phone. Make that a little transition moment, right? So you're actually engaged with who's on the phone. Assume the other person has good intentions, even if it seems like a frivolous question, that they do need your help. Get ahead of, if you are, I'm going to say snappy, harsh, have an edge to you, is apologize. Take some ownership. I think apologies are huge in terms of taking responsibility and pushing the reset button. There's a great quote around, people can forgive, patients can forgive, but I think this is all of us, can forgive mistakes of the head, but not of the heart. And I think that applies to, again, going back to that whole idea of caring for people. So I think slowing down, I think it's okay to say, I don't know. I think it's okay to say, I like knowing the power of a positive no is a strategy, which is to say, I can't answer that question right now. I can get back to you in 2 hours.
Okay.
I can't sit on that committee now, but please ask me again at another time.
Okay.
Because setting boundaries for physicians, I think, is really, really challenging. You're socialized not to set boundaries. You need to be all things to all people at all times. Yeah. It's weak. You guys have a bit of a competitive nature, a perfectionism. Like there is a physician personality profile that gets you into and through medical school. And it can, also cause some challenges. So coming back to slowing down, I think, and taking a big breath, not over-personalizing, assuming the other person has good intentions.
The world is rapidly changing. It's becoming smaller and smaller. I remember back in the day when we used to write letters to each other. Now it's replaced by text. And communication has never been so easier. But the problem is that we currently live in an age of information overload. And this information overload comes with serious problems of potential of being misinterpreted and potential of miscommunication, or sometimes lack of communication because sometimes organizations get too big. We live in an era of miscommunication, misinformation, disinformation. And one of the best ways to kind of overcome them is to remember that the responsibility starts from within us, that each and every one of us should try and build relationship capital with everybody we interact with. Try and break these silos. Try and interact with people and try and be very forgiving. Try and always remember that people in general are good and they care and their intentions in general are always noble. And if we all take a minute of our lives, a minute of every day to interact with people and appreciate them and share our stories with them, the world would definitely be a much better place. See you on the next one.
You were listening to Radiologists, a podcast by University Medical Imaging Toronto, the largest medical imaging group in Canada. Produced by Ina Levchuk. Learn more about us at universitymedicalimagingtoronto.ca and follow us on social media @Imaging Toronto.